On behalf of Samidoun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network, we send our greetings of solidarity and struggle to all those prisoners in Turkish jails who continue to struggle for freedom, and to all of the movements in Turkey and everywhere around the world who are struggling for freedom, justice, and liberation. Samidoun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network is an international network of organizers and activists that struggles to free over 5,000 Palestinian political prisoners from Israeli jails. There are some very important commonalities between the Palestinian prisoners who are fighting against Zionism, imperialism, and reactionary regimes, and the prisoners of Group Urum, the lawyers, the activists, the thousands of political prisoners who are being jailed by the Turkish regime today. Both of these groups of political prisoners represent all sectors of society. They represent the people who organize and lead their communities: trade union leaders, women's movement leaders, journalists, lawyers, advocates, musicians like the members of Group Urum. These are the people that are being imprisoned in Palestine and by the Turkish state for struggling for rights and justice and a liberated society that confronts imperialism, capitalism, Zionism, and all forms of oppression and exploitation. Today, we stand in solidarity with all of those prisoners who are fighting for freedom. We remember and salute the martyrs: Helene Bolek, Mustafa Koçek, Ibrahim Gökçek. We honor their sacrifice. We know that they are just like the martyrs of the Palestinian prisoners movement, who fell during hunger strikes as they struggled with their bodies for freedom, as they struggled with their bodies for liberation, as they struggled with their bodies for justice. And their martyrdom cannot pass unnoticed. Instead, it must be a call to all of us around the world who care for justice, who fight against imperialism, who fight against systems of incarceration that destroy lives and devastate communities, to escalate our solidarity and escalate our struggle until every one of these prisoners is free and until the prison walls are torn down and justice is obtained. In particular, we also want to specifically note the case of the imprisoned lawyers, the lawyers of the People's Law Office and of the Progressive Lawyers Organization, and many other lawyers in Turkey who are being imprisoned in Turkish jails because they continue to represent revolutionary struggles, because they continue to represent the trade union movements, they continue to represent the organizers, they continue to represent the strugglers, and they are being criminalized for simply providing a defense. They are being criminalized because they are conscious and active lawyers. And so, speaking also as a member of the International Association of Democratic Lawyers, one of our bureau members, Selçuk Kozagakli, is actually imprisoned in Turkish jails, again, under the same framework of anti-terror laws that we see being used to oppress Turkish and Kurdish activists and Palestinian activists, not only inside occupied Palestine, not only by the Turkish state, but also throughout Europe, in the United States. We see prisoners of the struggle in Turkey being held in Europe right now because they continue to fight for justice and because they continue to organize with their communities. We see people like George Abdullah, the Arab communist fighter for Palestine and against imperialism, who also always expresses his strongest solidarity with the political prisoners in Turkish jails, who's been jailed for 35 years in France. All of these strugglers are being jailed under the framework of unjust anti-terror laws that target liberation movements, that target revolutionary visions of the future, and leave intact and are used to further expand the power and attacks of state terror against people's movements and against the people as a whole. Every day, Palestinian prisoners are on the front lines struggling against Zionism, imperialism, colonialism, and all forms of exploitation. Of course, today is May 17th. It is also just 2 days after the 72nd anniversary of the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe, when over 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes and lands, and today nearly 13 million Palestinian refugees are still denied their right to return home. And so as we're participating in the week of Palestinian struggle, we know that this is also a week of international struggle. That we know that the struggle for justice and liberation that is being conducted in Turkey right now by these prisoners, that every musical song by Group Urim, whether it contains the word Palestine or not, is also a song for the liberation of Palestine. It is a song for all of our liberation, because these prisoners are those who are giving the greatest sacrifices and playing the greatest role in confronting the forces and systems of oppression that deny all of our rights, whether we're talking about workers being exploited in the meatpacking plants and the farms of the United States, whether we're talking about indigenous people whose lands have been confiscated by settler colonialism, whether we're talking about people fighting racism on the streets in Europe, or people fighting for liberation in Turkey and in Palestine and in the Philippines. We are all fighting together, and freeing our political prisoners is at the core of any vision for a liberated future. So today, we join you in saying, freedom for these prisoners, salute to the martyrs, justice, victory, and liberation for all, freedom for Palestine, freedom for all political prisoners in occupied Palestine, freedom for all political prisoners in Turkish jails. Long live international solidarity.